Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this new session of this Connect University event. As you know, Connect University sessions have been established now at the knowledge sharing flagship of the Commission to inform people and EU staff on the challenges that we are facing on digital technologies and policies. And I'm very happy to open this new session, which will be about boosting advanced digital skills. I mean, we have an outstanding lineup of speakers today and an outstanding moderator. We are going to discuss the challenges, the state of play of where we are on this key challenge for our successful digital transformation. Just a word that this session will be followed in a few days by another session on the 40th of March on 5G deployment, another critical element for our digital transformation for our life. So maybe to introduce and to start, we will have two short presentations. One for me on the digital decade as a general point, and then with Rihanna, we are going to have a real deep dive on the issue. Rihanna and her team are the ones that are really shaping the policy of the Commission in this regard, and she will tell us where we are and what we are doing in order for us to shape, attract, and maintain the vivid ecosystem of brains in Europe, which is at the center of our endeavor. I think there is no news in the fact that we are living in a very particular time of our history in the rise of technology, which is impacting all our lives, where all aspects of our activity, from work to life to social interactions, e-government, business, is being influenced by new technologies. We see in every newspapers new technologies, new services that are arriving. We've seen the rise of AI that last year, and everything is, nothing would be possible without the brains that are shaping these technologies and the services. And this is pretty clear that the 21st century will be competing about brains. And the way we are going to shape, to attract, and to train those intelligent people that are going to shape, to secure, is going to be a huge challenge for us. And this is exactly why we want to have this focus today on this key enabler for our digital transformation. There is no way that Europe will succeed in its shaping of the digital transformation to build the microprocessors, to build the infrastructure, to deploy the 5G, to make happening new services for consumers, for health, for protecting ourselves in a very difficult geopolitical environment. There is no way that we do all this without having the skills and the scientists, the experts that will provide for that. So, but maybe before entering into that specific discussion, maybe just to remind ourselves on the overall framework of this policy. And first, let me remind us that after the COVID, which has been a sort of a wake-up call on the fact that digital was really essential in our life and not just a supplementary layer, so that digital should be dealt with an overarching strategy that is setting a clear target and clear objectives to all of us and to send the right signals to the actors. And this is exactly what the EU did with the Digital Decade Strategy. The Digital Decade Strategy has been the first commitment from EU democracies to design and to seek to achieve concrete objectives, putting the digital transformation at the service of our future and building our future in a way that is not just about technical leadership, but also about values. And again, the brains that I mentioned earlier, we will be designing our services, designing the new infrastructures. They should also design them with our values. And this is also part of that attempt that we have tried to build a strategy that is mixing all these different elements. And we are doing this in a very pragmatic and concrete way, with concrete targets. I will come back to the targets on ICT specialists, but we have set up, and member states, co-legislators, the European Parliament and member states have decided to commit to achieve a series of very ambitious objectives and targets from now to 2023, to have connectivity, gigabit connectivity for everyone in Europe. To have the first computers with quantum acceleration by 2030. I mean, we all know that quantum will be one key solution to be in a secure and to get our leadership that we want to have in Europe. We also have targets for digitalization of businesses. I mean, how can a business today succeed without leveraging AI, cloud, big data? It's impossible. And we need to increase the share of our businesses that are doing this and that are using these technologies. Public government is also critical. It's part of our competitiveness. It's part of the quality of the service that people have and expect from us. It's also part of making sure that we can improve health, for instance, for our consumer, or the security via identification means. And of course, skills is one of the top priority for as part of this target. And we have two big targets. I will come back to the ICT specialist target, but we also have the objective to have an average level of basic skills across the population that is enough for them, for all of us, to benefit from this digital transformation. So skills is very much in the heart of it. Maybe we can just remind ourselves that it's very good to have targets. It's better to reach them. And this is exactly why we have also defined a governance system whereby we are not just analyzing the situation, setting the state of play, but also having with member states and with the parliament a process where we are monitoring, where we are making recommendations to member states, and where we are cooperating all together to make sure that we are progressing towards this target. And we have had already a first report last year in September. We are working already on the next one that we plan to adopt by June, in which we are precisely going to make a fully fledged and comprehensive assessment on where we are on the different fronts, on these different objectives and targets. But we are also going to put some recommendations so that we can collectively together with all the actors, member states, the parliament and civil society act together to move forward. If we look now to the ICT specialist element, which is part of before that, I mean, just a quick reminder of the key messages that the report issued back in September. I think one of the critical outcome of this report was to say, look, I mean, we have done so much on digital policy. I mean, if you look at the different initiatives that we have undertaken within this commission, with more than 68 initiatives from the commission over the last 4 years, I mean, we have been, putting Europe as a center of the actors for regulating and for taking initiatives to foster the industry. But we also have more to do. And one of the conclusions that is really critical, and it is very valid for us today, is that the success is not automatic. If we leave as it is, we are not going to reach the target, and in particular the target that we have on ICT specialists. So there is a sort of a wake-up call that is included in this report. The second point is that there are a couple of very important key enablers that are having an effect on all the targets. There is no way that we can reach any of these targets without having the skills. And the skills is a key enabler. This is a transversal, this is an horizontal element which will, from whose will depend all the other targets. And that's a very critical element. A last thing I would like to say that as part of the decade, we have also put forward a new type of multi-country project. So a new concrete facility for member states to act together and to put common funding in areas where, member states cannot really act alone. And skills is also part of that with the Cybersecurity Skill Academy, which precisely seek to to develop and increase the number of cybersecurity specialists to protect businesses and public services. We all know that cybersecurity is a must and a precondition for the transformation of our business. You know, you are not going to be using cloud services, AI, if you are not trusting into the service, and if you are not convinced that you can protect your company or your interest in using these services. And then maybe now, maybe looking at the target on ICT specialists, I would like to end with two things. I mean, first, this is a commitment that is taken at the highest level here in the Commission. You see here two quotes from Executive Vice President Vestager and Commissioner Breton. Clearly, the fact that talent, attracting talent, training talent, making sure that we have the right number of specialists is a key priority at the highest level in the Commission. And, you know, we'll know, we will see what will happen after the election, but my intuition that it will remain, you know, a long-term prospect, and it will remain a focus for the next college too. And last but not least, I think I have still one slide, which is just to show you that, you know, this is not just words that we are having here. We are having a very elaborate process where we are linking the state of play of what we are now, our goal by 2030, and concrete leverages to stimulate action. Where we are now on ICT specialists. Of course, Rihanna will develop that much more, but if you look at today's situation, the situation is not exactly where we want to be. We have an objective of 20 million ICT specialists by 2030 collectively in Europe. Today, we have less than 10 million. It means that we have basically 12 million more to reach in order for us to be in the right position by 2030. It means to double the rhythm of attraction and training that we have at the moment. This is a huge challenge. And this is a huge challenge against which we need to act now. And this is why we have produced recommendations. In the last report, we produced a series of recommendations. Some of them are directed to all member states, like the one that is mentioned in the slide on attracting and retaining ICT specialists. And we have also some recommendations which are targeted to specific member states, as the one that is being shown here in Austria on accelerating efforts for digital skills, in particular for upskillings and reskillings. And, you know, if we do that, we can progress and we can really make a difference. And this is critical, because if there is no way that we can succeed to be at the competitiveness place that we want to be, there is no way that we can build a secure, an interoperable, a sovereign Europe on digital transformation without having these skills. So now the question that is going to be discussed is, okay, so we have the state of play, we have the objective, we have the tools. Now, how can we make it concretely to get to the point where we will say in 2030, we have been successful? So for that, I will leave that to more experts than I am, and to the stimulation of the discussion that we are going to open now, starting with Rihanna on the state of play and where we are. Thank you very much to everyone, and enjoy the session.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome to all of you. So my name is Rehana Schwinninger-Ladek, and I'm the head of the unit, which is responsible for advanced digital skills. It is one of the three mandates of my unit, as I'm also responsible for the policies on virtual worlds and a number of data spaces supporting the data strategy of the Commission. So Eric has set very well the scene. We need 20 million ICT specialists by 2030 with gender convergence. And this target is also reiterated in the Digital Education Action Plan 21-27. So it is a politically important target. However, as we just heard, we are not there. That is, if we continue business as usual, we won't get there. So with the same level of progress, we will have 12 million employed specialists instead of the 20 million. And if we continue along the same lines, we won't be able to bridge the gender gap, which is already frightening. So 81% of specialists today, ICT specialists, are male. So this is not about reaching targets for the sake of reaching them, but it is about, as Eric said, one, not putting our labor markets under further strain, which can become acute. We have more than half of our enterprises today that struggle to hire ICT specialists. Two is about making sure that future digital solutions are developed in the EU in line with our values, principles, and legislation. And three, it's about ensuring that we will not be in a situation that will hamper innovation and the pace of technological advancement, particularly for industries that rely heavily on these cutting-edge technologies. So ultimately, it is about our future competitiveness and technological sovereignty. So what are we doing about it? And are we actually doing anything at all? It is a valid question. So let's look at it. So next slide. So we have a holistic, comprehensive approach that addresses the various stages of education, from primary, secondary, to tertiary education, to adult learning. And what I'm going to present today are only the efforts of DG Connect. These are not the wider efforts of the Commission, which were very well highlighted during the year of skills that is finishing. And I'm also very happy that our speakers today are here all ambassadors, true digital champions, of the intense effort that are going on. And they will all speak, in turn about what, how they are supporting this continuum. So if we continue, we start with schools. It is important that early on, children engage with activities that will support their knowledge and their interest in digital technologies. You don't build ICT specialists overnight. We have to instill this interest in digital technologies. And the one of our key flagship to support this is the EU Code Week initiative, which is a grassroots initiative, which is known worldwide. It aims to spread computational thinking, coding, and related digital skills. And the numbers are massive. In 23, we had 72,000 events and over 3 million participants. So thanks a lot to Marc Durand here and his team for all the efforts in really building this initiative. Moving to higher education. As you can see on the chart, we didn't compare well to the UK, and we are far, far behind from the US in terms of availability of bachelor's and master's program. And the forecasts are not better. The BRICS country, including Indonesia, will produce 3/4 of the global STEM graduates by 2030, while Europe will account for a mere 8% of the whole share. So it is not a boy races game, but it's actually really about us, making sure we have the right capacities, the brains, as Eric said, about our own future competitiveness. And in addition, the EU also needs to equip sector specialists with the appropriate advanced digital skill. So the doctors, who are going to have to handle AI to be able to make more acute diagnosis. Farmers, we hear them a lot, but they will also need, to master advanced skills to be able to make more accurate precision, agriculture precision. So it is, on the one hand, the specialists, but also the workforce that will need to be better skilled. Moving higher up, so we have been investing in specialized education programs, so bachelor's, master's, and as of this year, PhD degrees, as well as short-term training courses for upskilling and reskilling the workforce. And we have for this a fantastic program, which is called the Digital Euro Program, which allows us to specifically support the uptake of higher education in key technologies, what we call the key capacity areas, artificial intelligence, data, semiconductors, extended reality technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. And for this, we nurture partnerships among academia, businesses, and research entities across the EU, we aspire at cultivating an education and training ecosystem which is more interconnected and which is closely aligned to the needs of the market. It's making sure that the workforce, the future workforce, will master the right knowledge and the right tools to be able to contribute to this competitiveness. And in 2023 only, we invested around 85 million euros of grants for these programs under the Digital Euro program. So we have been quite successful in the past couple of years. You can see the slide is smooth. So we have been able to support specialized education programs in different key technologies such as AI, cybersecurity, microelectronics, digital twins, quantum, but also applied, to important areas such as health, housing decarbonization, energy and wind. Let me take an example. So we have, for instance, right now, a project that is supporting digital skills for healthcare transformation. So the goal of the project, which will soon start, is to design a global master's program in digital health for the advanced digital skills of health professionals, focusing on AI, cybersecurity, data, robotics, and IoT. And the master program is going to be offered simultaneously in 6 universities across EU, with a strong emphasis on collaboration with the IT industry and health organization. Another example we have is DigiWind, which is going to offer digital masters for wind and energy systems. And the idea will be to focus on high performance computing, AI, cybersecurity, and other emerging technologies. And the project is ambitious because it's going to educate and certify over 900 master students and 10,000 industry professionals in 4 years. But still, it is not sufficient, So we will need to keep on pushing all these efforts. So if we can move. A new strand of action that we have been building our academies. So Eric mentioned the Cybersecurity Skills Academy. The idea is that we want to create umbrella initiatives that bring together all the various ongoing actions and that we really create ecosystems. And the first one that we launched is the Cybersecurity Skills Academy with a dedicated formal communication last year in April. And we all know how big a concern cybersecurity is for everyone, for people, for businesses, for public services. But we don't have enough skilled workers in the EU. We have currently 200,000 cybersecurity experts that are missing. So we need to address that demand. And at the same time, that demand is increasing because there is legislation that is kicking in, like the Cybersecurity Resilience Act, like the NIS2 directive. So we have these legislative requirements that will also demand, more specialists. So this is an important area. And we have adopted the same kind of academy approach for 2 other key areas, which is the European Semiconductors Skills Academy and the high performance computing, because both of them, one is very new, the other one has been there for a long time, but they have the same acute need, which is to have enough people who have the knowledge and the digital skills. Now, this comes all under one umbrella, which is the Digital Skills and Job Platform Coalition, which is a one-stop shop for advanced digital skills. And it is the home of Digital Skills and Job Coalition, which also pushes member states to come together. We have 25 national coalitions, and they act as ambassadors. And they're also very well represented today through Mark and through Madhumati. And the idea is really to share good practices, training opportunities, studies, national strategies, data, opinions. And it is also going to be the hub for the cybersecurity Academy and also for Future Academy. So this is an important hub that will continue to grow. Continuing along the lines of what we do, data space for skills. So if we can move to the next slide. So the data space for skills is a vast action which contributes to our education and training objectives, but at the same time, it is part of our European strategy for data. So the overarching game objective is to create for all data spaces, a genuine single market for data where data can be shared and accessed easily by people, by enterprises, by public services, by anyone who needs that kind of data. So typically data spaces, they facilitate secure data pooling and data sharing through governance structures and mechanism for entering into contract for data sharing. And this is essential on the one hand for interoperability and for creating the trust that is needed in these ecosystems. So the data space for skills will be a common data space for sharing and accessing data skills for various purposes, for analytical and statistical purpose, for reuse in innovative application areas, for all kinds of access to data in relation to education records, skills offered by employees, skills needed by employers, matchmaking. So given the sheer scale of this ambition, we're proceeding in phases. So the first phase was to prepare this action. And now that we have a blueprint, we are going to move to the second phase, which is going to actually deploy this data space so that it can start sharing and allowing the access to data. And my last slide, and I'll finish with this. So as you can see, it's a highly dynamic landscape. On the one hand, with technological, the pace of technological development, and on the other hand, the needs, the sectoral needs, and to stay abreast for that, it is important that policymakers at EU level, at national level, at regional level, we have a fine understanding, of what's going on or what's going on. It's not only about macroeconomic, indicators. It's really about knowing what do we mean, about specific job in specific domains, in specific technologies. And for that, we have an important project that supports us, which is LEAD, which is led by Brendan, and which really provides this kind of, meaningful, much more, micro data and insights, about what's going on. So I really recommend everybody to go and look at the website. You have a lot of useful data. And it's also important for us in terms of community engagement, like today. So we all act as an ecosystem. And I think this, is a perfect transition to Brendan, who's now going to take over and launch the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Rana, and thank you as well to Eric for inviting us here today. I think what is certainly noticeable for us is the importance of bringing attention to this discussion of advanced digital skills. Really, this 8 million gap is quite significant. It's quite a challenge, and it needs a lot of people talking about it and a lot of activity across the different areas there as well. And I think really to enforce that message that advanced digital skills really is the driving force behind this need for Europe to adopt these new advanced technologies effectively, to develop new, novel, cutting-edge advanced digital technologies that are competitively leading, and finally to drive that innovation and that results that we need across the board. Fundamentally, this is about bringing forward the results of the investments that we're making, the significant results we're making in research, in transformation, in infrastructure as well. And without the skills, the talent there in place, we're going to end up requiring more investments, further investments, as we need to keep up in a different area there as well. So I won't cover back over the data, but just first of all to say welcome to the over 700 people I think we have now online. You're welcome to join us in the discussion using Slido. The colleagues from the Commission will add this in there today. And to introduce myself, so my name is Brendan Rohn. I work for BlueSpecs, where I'm the Managing Consultant for Tech Policy and Skills Unit. And in this context, I'm speaking on behalf of the LEADS project. So within LEADS, we've been working within the digital programme to really define better this challenge because it is a very dynamic environment. It's changing every year. and it's not stopping, and it's something that we need to keep on unpicking and also working on from different aspects. As you will see, the demand for digital skills, advanced digital skills, is increasing across the board. We are going to need between 4 times and 3 times, for example, in AI or in data, skilled people to meet the current demand of companies and their IT spend, for example. And we've independently identified that we will need at least between 4 million and 9 million new professionals with skills across AI, edge, cloud, IoT, DLTs, etc. That lines very nicely with the objectives that we have for the digital decade here today. And just a final thing to remind you that we have, if you want to continue discussion, we'll be meeting in person in Madrid on May 16th at the 20 by 30 summit. So also welcome to join us there today. So moving on to the panel discussion, really looking forward to having some excellent contributions and bringing furthermore detail to this challenge and understanding it from a different point of view. We've got here today a very good, diverse panel, who each of them I'll ask to introduce themselves shortly, that really represents it from the point of view of industry, from higher education, from training, from policy, and looking at this multifaceted aspects that we'll be able to bring forward as well. We'll be unpicking a little bit of what is it that we're actually talking about. We want to kind of clarify some of the understandings from different points of views. And then also we'll be looking more about what is it that we as Europe and as European society are not is hindering us at a whole European level in reaching what is a reasonable objective. We have all the goods, we have all the systems in place, but for some reason this still keeps evading us, and it's something that we'd like to at least push forward the needle today. So if I can ask my panelists to come forward and introduce themselves, I'll go first in reverse order. So if I can invite Mylène Richard, if you could please just introduce yourself shortly.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mylène Richard. I'm a director of Digital Campus based in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region in France. And our campus is a public services created to provide a high level of training for students and help companies to hire and to benefit from digital skills. We also help companies, industrial companies, to discover and integrate new technology and thus improve their performance.
Thank you very much. And then maybe I can invite Marc from EU Schoolnet.
So, hello everybody, I'm Marc Durando. I'm the Executive Director of European Schoolnet. European Schoolnet is a network of more than 30 Ministries of Education working on the transformation of education, more the teaching and learning processes. And we try to contribute to the enhancement of digital skills for both teachers and students, and more particularly to make STEM and digital studies more attractive for young students.
Thank you very much, Marc. And then I think already identified, the key role that you're playing, for example, in Code Week and within the platform as well. And then maybe if I can invite Martin from the University of Limerick.
Hi, everybody. Martin Hayes. I'm Professor of Digital Technologies at the University of Limerick. I'm leading the UL at Work project, which is the human capital initiative funded by the Government of Ireland from our National Training Fund, which is exploring work integrated learning, particularly with a digital technology remit. And for my sins, I wound up being pen holder for the Dean's Group document as we prepared the Dean's Group response to the challenge of how to provide the number of ICT professionals that the EU requires. So.
Jack?
Yes, hello. I'm Jack Hammond, Director General for Administrative Simplification and Digitalization at the Federal Public Services, BOSA, which is also the Federal Public Services in charge of recruiting and training civil servants. One of the key activities we have is, of course, providing digital solutions to ministries or, let's say, public institutions, but also to enterprise and to citizens. And and most important, probably, we also have programs for digital inclusion for citizens. Thank you.
Thanks. Justina?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Justina Belowskait. I'm Innovations Director at European Digital SME Alliance. And our organization is a representative of European SMEs. It's first and largest network representing more than 45,000 companies in digital sector. And I'm in organization for around a decade now. And technology evolved in the ways unimaginable back then. And we changed topics, we worked with different technologies, we had working groups coming and going. But there was one single topic that has never changed since I started. You guess right, that's digital skills. And of course, we are not different than anyone else in the industry. We do face the skills gap, and this is why we are working on the topic. But perhaps what's important for our community is to bring the message that ICT SMEs are the ones that are best positioned in local ecosystems to also spread the skills, spread the knowledge. We are the ones working through all different value chains with all the sectors, and as such, we also deliver skills and knowledge to the piece we are working on within our companies. So as such, we are involved in a number of initiatives on the topic.
Thanks, Justina. Unfortunately, I don't think people heard what you were saying, which was absolutely right, that digital skills is this wicked problem, and it's been ongoing in the communities, and the SMEs really are part of the regional ecosystems that drive forward this talent development initiatives as well. And I think then joining us online, we also have Madhumati Sharma, who's joining us online. So hopefully we can have a short introduction from you.
Yeah, hi everyone. I hope you all can hear me well. So greetings to all of you from Barcelona. I'm at the Mobile World Congress. We're talking about digital skills and connectivity, and I think I'm actually joining from a good location. I'm a founder and president of Workshop for Me. It's a non-profit organization based in Luxembourg, where we want to create the problem solvers of the futures using digital skills. So coding, robotics, AI. I also wear the hat of the Luxembourg EU Code Week ambassador. So I was very happy to hear about EU Code Week being one of the initiatives. And I'm also a technical professional myself. So an ICT specialist, as we define it, is something that I have been doing for more than 25 years. And I'm happy to be part of the discussion, wearing these different hats and lenses. One, of a professional working in the digital skills space myself. Two, coding, bringing coding skills to the younger generation so they can contribute to the digital skills gap that we are talking about. And three, how we can as a community work towards solving this problem together. So I'm happy to join this discussion with all of you today.
Great, and I'm going to keep you on screen actually, because I think you've launched into already the first part of the discussion that we want to have, which is, we all understand the statistical definition of an ICT specialist. We all, in some way, have an understanding of what advanced digital skills are. So from your background, you are an ICT specialist. You work in this area. What does an ICT specialist look like to you? And also, how do you make that difference between advanced and basic digital skills? Where do you see that line as well?
Yeah, this is actually a great question, Brandon. My definition changes depending on the audience I'm actually speaking to. So if I'm in a room full of ICT specialists, my definition of basic and advanced would be different than it would be if I'm sitting in a room of the general public or people working in the industry. So very, very basically, when we talk about basic skills, it's about using something as a user, as a consumer, someone who can open up their phone, connect to a particular app, use it for the use, is someone who has basic skills, someone who can connect on the internet, go to a website, fill in their information and get what they need. For me, that's basic skills. But for an ICT specialist, basic skills would be a little bit more than that. It would also be about using the technology and creating using that technology. And when we get to advanced, it would be going into a more deeper level of being able to provide that as an app or as a service to other people as well. So taking the example of, say, machine learning, someone who has basic skills would be able to say what machine learning is, build a model or two, but someone with advanced skills would be able to take it to the next level and decide on which particular algorithm is the right one to use in this particular instance, and then put it to use for the use case that they're trying to solve.
I think that's a great definition, actually. I think that is probably a bit more universal than you think. Maybe Martin, if I can invite you, because you yourself obviously have background as an engineer and work in this area. And in fact, you are part of churning out ICT specialists in your day-to-day life. What do you see it as? What's your kind of view on this definition, and where do you see that line?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, don't like the word churn. Suggests a little bit of cranking handles, which I don't. But anyway,
craft at high speed.
Okay. I like it much better. And as you say, previously I was head of the School of Electronic Computer Engineering at the university, so I have 20 years of experience in terms of growing ICT engineering specialists. And Madhumati made a great point, which is that it is discipline dependent. My brother-in-law, he teaches in a primary school in rural County Clare in the Midwest of Ireland. It's a 6-teacher school. He is their advanced ICT skills specialist because he upskilled in digital whiteboard technology. And whenever any of the teachers have problems in terms of using that whiteboard technology in their classrooms, he is the person they call on in terms of solving any of the tech glitches or upgrades or things like that. Clearly, for my computer engineering class, that isn't what we describe an advanced skills specialist as. So I suppose the best analogy we can see or I can offer to the audience is that it's the difference between being able to and being licensed to drive a car and knowing what's going on in the engine, being able to lift the hood and being able to kind of maintain and know what's going on in the various parts of the engine. So my take on this is that advanced skills specialists are those people who can lift the hood and point to what's going on in the engine and explain it in a sensible fashion. So within that context, explainable AI skills are really, really important. The idea of being able to, move towards circuit diagrams, explaining in a functional block fashion what's going on in deep learning algorithms, being able to explain bias in a tractable fashion. These are the kind of things that I feel advanced ICT skills specialists need to be able to do as well.
That's actually not the first time I've heard that analogy of there's the mechanic and the driver. And as the cars got more advanced, the mechanic did less and the driver had to know less, but they still had that separation between the two areas there. So that analogy is actually coming through quite strongly in the different areas. And I think I can only imagine the suffering that your brother has to go through in terms of answering the demands of the whiteboard updates, etc., etc. Thank you both very much for that point of view. And I think that's really kind of helps us classify really where we are in that line, bringing forward that we're not talking just about hardcore, if I can use that language, hardcore specialists, but the ones that are able to apply it in the appropriate ways. And in be able to apply it and work and drive forward. And I think Madhumati, you brought it forward quite nicely for us. Deliver something at the end. Deliver it for the use case, deliver it for the customer, understand the domain expertise, understand the knowledge, and work forward that way. So just a reminder to everyone online, you can still contribute in terms of Q&A with the Slido, and we'll also be have time at the end of this discussion. We do have a lot to get through. Bear with us, we'll get through it. I promise you it'll be interesting, but at the end we will also address your questions directly and bring you into this conversation as well. Moving on to the next part, I think we've discussed already how important advanced digital skills are to our competitiveness, to our industry, to our society. Maybe Milan, you work very closely with the companies within your region, defining what is the skills needs, how can you bring forward employment, and how can you bring forward the right talent to meet the needs of the companies you work with. But we all know we have this huge ICT specialist gap. What does that look like for the companies you deal with? How does that represent itself in the day-to-day for the company?
As I work with industrial companies, I would like to share with you 3 ideas this morning. When I talk with my clients, I understand that as we all know, factories are more and more digitalized, so we need the jobs have significantly changed in the factories. So that's why those companies need more and more ICT specialists. But the problem with this lack of specialists, it's the salary requirements increased. So it becomes very difficult for an industrial company to hire because it means spending money on labor, which is not core business for them. So digital specialists are, for them, only a lever for performance, and industrial companies struggles to afford this level of performance. So the increasing labor cost is a real brake on growth and access to new markets for them. For the biggest companies, for biggest industrial companies, it's another story because they have enough money to outsource strategic and non-strategic tasks to IT services providers. But they become very dependent on digital service provider and resulting in reduced ability to optimize labor-related costs. So it's also a problem. So it's a problem if you have money or if you don't have money. So that's what is funny in this situation. And as far as SMEs are concerned, we can see that they can afford digital tools, for instance, a software, but lack the skills to evolve the tools over the time to align with changing business and customer needs. So alternatively, they may need to pay application maintenance, leading to a loss of autonomy of their IT tools. So they struggle to leverage the full potential of an IT tool, or it's the same for a service. So unable to optimize their IT expenses, they experience a decline in profitability. So
pretty big issues, if I may say, and I think quite interesting, especially within the industrial context. The integration of those global supply chains really makes competitiveness. You know, you have to be. We spoke with a company before who was, if we're not applying the most advanced technology, we're dead in a year. You know, and this is also where our industry is going, and we see a lot of the challenges there. Just want to do a small kind of incision, because you commented on the difference of the experience from an SME who has less resources compared to a large company. Maybe, Justina, you could give us just a short view on how you're seeing it from your constituents of your organization, and where the SMEs are seeing that challenge that maybe perhaps is very different to a larger organization.
Yes, indeed. I think so. There are two types of SMEs, of course, the ones that are less mature and that have these difficulties that Milan rightly pointed out. And we also have our community of SMEs that probably face a bit different difficulties, as we are the ones with probably most of ICT skills. However, besides that, we still have much more difficulties to retain the skills. Because what you see in SMEs, they hire usually young professionals with multiple studies, including the one done on impact assessment of digital opportunity traineeships. That was a great initiative by European Commission a few years ago, show that for young professionals, the best path is to go to an SME, because the skills you get are much more universal. You can try yourself in different fields. You can quickly upskill just through work placement and so on. However, we are all clearly attracted by a nice entry in CV to work for Google, by a nice office environment, perhaps, with some games to play, with some Coca-Cola, not promoting a single brand in the office. And as such, it's very, very hard to retain these young people and motivate them and show them that your actual path and your development would be much faster, and perhaps you can achieve much more working in a small company. So as such, we have a big drain going to world large corporations and also leaving Europe. So that's one of the big issues that also our constituency faces in retaining ICT professionals.
Thank you so much, Justina. I think, and 100%, you know, if you're out there 22 years old and you really want to get proper experience, a little bit stressful experience, but proper experience, an SME is absolutely where you want to go to get your hands dirty. And we saw, for example, when we were looking at the convergence of edge computing, we saw the big difference between the SMEs is that they're asking one person to have multiple skill sets, whereas large organizations were able to create multiple teams with individual skill sets. A very nice difference there as well. And then just to close off this kind of part, we're talking about the impact and how it's being felt of this lack of ICT specialists in demand. Maybe, Jack, you'd like to comment from a broader society. You know, how is this impacting us as a society? What's this look like for Europe? What's in your point of view?
Thank you. Then, as government agency, of course, we are facing similar challenges that we have for SMEs or large enterprise. We never digitalized so much in the society the last few years. Just to give you an example, the growth that we have in adoption is about 10 to 40% adoption year on year for products. Means that from a demand side, the population, the companies are asking to have more digital services. Then in general, what we do, we develop, of course, digital product and services, and we have to match the demand with the offering. The lack of resource is definitely an issue. That's why what we see is that governments, by adopting digital solutions, is creating a positive circle that population, for example, they will demand more, and they will also train themselves much more. When we look to the young children or even the young adults, they're used to say, I want it digital and I want to learn by myself how to use them. We are not training so much the young people, I would say. Even the older people, they adopt quite quickly our solutions. Then about the challenge and the digital in a way. We have the positive side and the less positive side. The positive side is with digital, we have very, very positive environmental and sustainable impact. We see how, for example, a lot of digital processes impacting positively life of citizens and life of enterprise. They don't have to move to municipalities or administration to get a lot done. Just by clicking, they just get a lot of operations done, which means very positive in daily life. The less good side is that if we'd like to keep the pace of the demand, we need to adapt continuously, obviously, the system. This is why from a public institutions, the government, we need to work with all the stakeholders and ecosystem to make sure that we will have the ICT specialist. And we heard Sharma and everybody talking about what is ICT specialist. We can deep dive a bit more about what is exactly an ICT specialist. But one of the key things we never say enough is that we need translators. And that's why we are also bringing simplification to digital. First, we need to simplify, and then we need to digitalize. And then when we do that, we are maintaining digital solutions where it's more lean about what we need to support, develop, and maintain. Then just to say, digital is providing a lot of value for society, but we need indeed to have more specialists. And this is something we will discuss a bit later, I believe.
Yes, and I think it's one of those things that this advanced digital skills challenge, people kind of package it as somewhere else, but actually it affects us all, and all of us are having to adapt faster than we expected. And we're seeing, for example, new introductions technologies that we didn't anticipate in the market already are really having an impact, and the changes that's also happening, not just for people who don't come from a STEM background or an ICT trained background, but also ICT specialists themselves. You know, the rate of change of their job is changing significantly, and how the technology solutions, especially around the theme of convergence, that really is changing how we need to address our continuous. This is a continuous challenge. It's not going to stop. You know, I'd love to tell you, you know, it's stopped for 5 years, we can fix it. It's not. It's something that's going to keep on growing, and we have to be faster and more flexible in how we address it, so that everyone can be part of this and be better at it as well. Thank you all very much for that. And I think maybe we can move on to maybe some examples. You know, perhaps I turn to you, Mark, because you work with a lot of policy and working with ministries for education and schools. You know, how are you seeing this being addressed well at a member state level or even at a European level? Because it is difficult. It is a wicked problem. You know, how are you seeing policy addressing it, and how is it working out?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Rihanna mentioned in her introduction a certain number of key initiatives, such as the UCode Week or the Digital Skills and Job Platform. But if I'm taking the example of a UCode Week, the main challenge is not to gather 3 million students, and the main challenge is to scale up this innovation and to embed it into our national education systems, to make it long-lasting, to make it integrated into curriculum. And that's part of the how are we going to transfer good practice, how are we going to manage in an appropriate way innovation. And one of the main elements on the transferring of innovation is not to transfer the innovation as such, because it doesn't work. That's to transfer the process which led to the innovation. And that's what makes that very, very complicated. So I don't want to go in detail on presenting EU Codric and Digital Skills and Job Platform. I'd like only to share with the audience the current situation regarding the current level of knowledge and competence in the STEM area globally at the secondary level. And we all know that PISA has revealed very recently quite shocking figures, I would say, and it doesn't reassure you, and especially the higher education sector, that I'm sure Martin will have to comment that, because the level of students in these STEM disciplines, science and math, is decreasing. But we are facing with a double challenge, because that's not because we are competent, that we are interested to push, to continue STEM studies. And when we are a young STEM graduate, that we are interested to take up a STEM job. And when I look the figures and the target figures of the digital decade, and I'm an engineer from a background, so I like studying figures. And I'm sorry, but that's the only evidence we can have. Globally, we have 4.3 million graduates from the higher education systems in Europe. Globally, 1/5 of them are STEM graduates, which means that our systems produce every year less than 900,000. If we say out of these 900,000, only half of them will enter in any STEM jobs, and that's what plenty of research tell us. So it means that we'll never reach the 20 million from the higher education systems, even with the initiatives that the Commission is taking on new masters, new bachelors, new PhD, etc. But from time to time, it's replaced other masters which are closing with new masters. But in terms of quantitative data, it doesn't change anything. So which means we have to work on the attractiveness of STEM studies and STEM jobs from the early age. But then you are facing a time issue, because you will not graduate young students and you will not invite young students to change stereotype and so on in only 2 or 3 years. It will take maybe a decade before you can start looking at the impact of what you are doing. And that's what we are trying to do with the Scientix initiative, which is a community of science teachers in Europe, to make them more innovative, and working also with a profession in schools, which is disappearing, which are the guidance counselors. Guidance counselors in Europe are talking about the jobs of yesterday, and they are not talking to you about the jobs of tomorrow. And that's certainly one area where we really have to work together. So that's only a small contribution on what we could do.
No, and thank you very much, Mark, because I think that we'll pull that forward into our discussion in the second half now, because I think you really are capturing some of the essence of what it is we're talking about here, and the multi-horizon environment that we need to discuss, and the fact that we have the need now, but we can't wait for the changes that are going to take effect. Maybe Martin, over to you, kind of if we can take the idea of the pipeline. Mark hands them over to you, so it gets them ready, gets the STEM enthused, and they enter you. What are you seeing that's working well from a university point of view, from higher education, and what is it that you're playing with? Where do you have good examples there?
So everything that Mark says is entirely correct. We run to stand still, right, in terms of the numbers of graduates that we need. And the leaky pipeline is a thing. We look at all the excellent work that's been done at primary and secondary level, and then we see the first drop-off, post-puberty particularly, in terms of, gender stereotypes being reinforced, and it being harder than ever to attract women into the ICT disciplines post-puberty. And I think we just have to accept, and rather than characterize it as a leaky pipeline, realize that there's going to be a skills highway with multiple exit and entry points. And facilitating the routes onto that highway so as that students, particularly, for example, we have more graduates, and we are, particularly in an Irish context, we are now at more than 70%, university degrees, bachelor's level. So the idea of those students getting out into the workplace and then being able to, through a combination of either staying in the workplace and upskilling within the workplace scenario, or being able to come back in and then develop that digital leg to their skills stool, right? So we assume, particularly in science and engineering, that we have pie-shaped graduates coming out, that they have digital skills and something else. The reality is that in the afternoon of this riddle, we're going to need arts, humanities, business students to come back into the system and get that digital leg on their skills stool in order to be competitive going forward. And to set the universities on a firm funding footing so that we can do, and we're in a place to be able to do that and provide attractive offerings to those students who want to come back in and upskill appropriately, because we know they'll have to be there. I mean, the jobs are there, the tasks there, the requirement is there. So it's our job to facilitate that. And to be fair to the Commission in terms of the monies that it's put in place in terms of the master's programs, particularly the short courses, credential programs, the offers are there, the work is being done. Could we be better? Of course we could. You know, would we accept more money? Of course we would. Would that solve the problem necessarily? Perhaps not. You know, but I think rather than there being a magic bullet, the answer is always all of the above. We keep doing everything that we can in every sector of the society that we can, and hope. And I know people will say hope isn't a strategy, but
but do you have the capacity to produce more graduates in a so short period of time at the higher education system? That's one of the key questions as well.
I look at university populations across Europe, and they are growing significantly. I know, for example, in the University of Limerick context, you're growing now to 18,500 students with a target of 24,000 students by 2025. And this has been replicated across the union and across the member states. So the graduate populations are increasing. Now, there is clearly, Mark, a question, are they getting the right skills? So happy to be held to account, happy to have our feet held to the fire in terms of if we're not doing the right things, you know, then we can, this is what our accreditation programs are for, you know. So capacity, yes. Attracting people who can teach them well, there are things perhaps in policy level that perhaps we could do a little bit better. But
I think we can unpick that further, because there is something that we've been discussing, is how the university's capacity to absorb this, but also a lot of people that I know who deliver master's courses in advanced digital technologies, they struggle with intake. You know, it's not just a case of the course, they struggle with the intake of meeting the skills requirements they need for an effective upskilling or training their way. Jack, you had to point out in there.
Yes, yeah, I'm always happy to engage with academical world, and you know, sometimes I like to challenge professors.
Bring it on.
We are one of the largest employer in the EU. I mean, public services, and from time to time, we see new masters, bachelor students coming, and then we came to a number of reflection. And the reflection is that, is it not one story? Is it an end story? And just to give you very short, because we can discuss during hours, I think that, of course, as Mark said, we need to work now, but the effects will be a long time. But one of the key messages that connecting the values to the ICT jobs, values of society. What does it mean? Is that we understand when we are lawyer, when we are doctor, pharmacist, and social worker, and so on, what is the connection? We need to connect ICT jobs to those values. And then people will say, I want to contribute to the well-being of society. Then my direction will be, my contribution will be going to ICT. Two, if we go a bit further, we don't, and I was supposed to be a civil engineer, and I became a psychologist. I don't know who is right, but and when I was a psychologist, I was dreaming to invent artificial intelligence. We didn't call that at that time, but it's not because we are one single way that we are ICT specialists. I think that we have to open doors, is that we need to have as basics a number of skills, which I will call probably advanced, for all type of let's say, university degrees and bachelors. And then we have the specialized, and then we have to have, of course, choice to provide from universities and academic the right directions to have the ICT specialists not being very strong in physics and mathematics, but it's of course an advantage. And last but not least, we have the non-educational project where we see, and we took initiative, for example, that we need to have a combination of upskilling, rescaling stuff, which is keeping the employability of all or civil servants, for example, along all their life. Then is the end story. And last comment I would do, you know, there is no age to learn. There is no difference. We need to make sure that we keep that in mind. Independently of the age, you keep the pace, and this is responsibility of everybody. Thank you.
I think that brings us quite nicely to some of our initial inputs from Slido, because we've been asking people, first of all, how's their day? Everyone's busy. Plus de change. But also people are really looking at, you know, the challenge around this and the variety that this is needed, and the curiosity that people are bringing to this conversation. And we also asked them around, you know, what's the top priority for the next 2 to 3 years? And bingo on the money, 42% think it's equipping non-ICT specialists with advanced digital skills. It's top, followed by producing new ICT specialists. So we have that balance coming through as well in what we're discussing. And it is part of the fact that this is multifaceted. There is no single challenge here. It's not one thing or another. It's multiple areas. I think that's what you were discussing as well, Martin. And then finally, a lot of people are interested in driving forward the industry-led upskilling and reskilling as part of a kind of key priority that industry is taking control of some of its responsibility and driving forward its opportunities. And then also looking at more flexible approaches, which picks up, I think, what you were talking about, Martin, on the need for different pathways and different navigating different routes, that everyone's experience is unique and everyone's story is unique, and that also reflects in their career development, that we maybe can drive forward, as you say, Jack, in the, you know, giving them the overall challenge there. And of course, I can't go without making the joke about, well, both psychology and civil engineers deal with cracks, so they just have to patch them in different ways. I think that's a great point for us to move into kind of the broader discussion and maybe bring in some of the other speakers, really, which is this refocusing ourselves back down on this challenge. And we've already started to unpick some parts of the areas. We've talked about the education context. We've talked about the need for domain experts to be brought into the fold. We've talked about that drive to increase our STEM output as a way of providing a certain level of immunity in this ever-changing environment that we need to look at. And then also how we can drive forward, you know, universities there. But maybe if I go to Madhavanti, because you're online, I always feel like I want to make sure that you're in the discussion. You know, what is it for you that you think is the main challenge or the main kind of barriers that we're facing in Europe to reach this number? You know, it's not a huge number. You know, it's not a huge number. And as Hannah has already said, you know, the BRICS, including Indonesia, are going to produce 75% more STEM of global STEM graduates, and we are way behind. You know, we are way behind, and we're falling even further, as Mark has also identified there as well, and including the US. You know, even when we look at the US, we're like, oh, we produce similar amount of STEM graduates, but when you look at ICT graduates within that, we produce half. So maybe moving probably away from perhaps the STEM graduate conversation, but maybe Madhavanti, what's your main observation of why this is such a sticky problem for us in Europe to achieve?
Yeah, so if I mean, everyone has made really great points there, and one important point that Mark touched upon, I think, is which I want to get a little bit deeper into, is the mindset and the perspective that our younger generation have. And this is a cultural thing. I think it's really very cultural in Europe. There were other speakers who have highlighted this as well. People don't understand the value and the lure as to why they should get into STEM careers. Why should we actually go and become an ICT specialist? You know, what's in it for me? So I think that this is one of the areas where we have to kind of focus on. The results will not come by 2030 for sure, because mindset changes take long to happen. It has to start from the younger generation and also the older generation to be able to understand. You see more parents talking about making their children lawyers or I mean, even artists or whatever. I mean, not to say that they are not good professions to get into. Of course they are. But if you look around, the world needs ICT specialists. The world needs STEM graduates to solve the problems. And I think changing the mindset and knowing that if I get into a STEM career, these are the things that I'm going to be able to get for myself, and this is how I'm going to be able to contribute to the world is going to change it. So I would say we need to focus a lot on working on changing this mindset and the thinking of people to try to adopt it. I feel that is actually going to take us forward. I mean, as we've heard already, we have possibly missed the bus for 2030 to get to 20 million, but I'm saying that we can go at the exponential pace at which we are wanting to go now if we start right away in focusing on changing this mindset and thinking, starting from the young professionals of today. You see, the young children, they are born with a smartphone in their hand, they are using it. But now I think it is about changing it from becoming a user or a consumer of technology to becoming a creator of technology, to start building apps, not just using apps. That's thinking is what I think we need. It's not a silver bullet. It's a very uphill task, Brendan, as all of us here know. But I think that's what we have to focus on and start working on. And big countries and others have shown that it is possible, by that.
I think I love the idea of consumer to creator. I think that's a great call out there, the vocational call that we need to have. Maybe Milen, from your point of view, what is it that you're seeing, and especially because you work at such a tight relationship with your regional industry, but what is it you think as Europe is making this so difficult for us particularly to really overcome this?
I think that we have some troubles to encourage people to learn to have all the digital skills. So I think I quite agree that we should encourage children to go to the. I'm sorry, I've lost my idea. I just need to focus. I'm a little bit stressed. So what I can see is that we have some difficulties to encourage children to go to digital trainings and the digital education. And what I can see also is that we have lots of problems to encourage women to face with those career. In our region, only 20% women work in digital career, so that's a big problem. What I can see is that we need to encourage some initiative like, I don't know if you know an initiative that's called TUMO, which is a Center for Creative Technologies for children aged 12 to 18. So we welcome this creative center in our campus because we think that it's the way to go to encourage those young people to create technology and not only to use it. So by doing some they learn this learning program based on self-learning activities, workshop, project labs. Students can discover game development, filmmaking, and so on. And in that way, understand how they can have an impact on technologies. And I'm sure that is the best way to faced with all the difficulties we have today with these digital skills. I'm sorry, I was hesitating. I'm very sorry.
No problem. I think what you picked up on there is, being able to equip people with that resilience, that ability to adapt to change, because I think that's something that is coming across it. And maybe, Justina, if we go kind of away from the earlier stage of the pipeline and bring us more perhaps closer to the industry side of things and the kind of more immediate challenge of what are we going to do now? What is it that's stopping us from being able to upscale people, reskill, or even, just generate, when we even have STEM graduates, generate the right STEM graduates? What is creating that difficulty for us in Europe?
So I can only subscribe to what Milan and Madhumanti said. I definitely agree with both of the points, but perhaps to bring two more points here. One of them, and very important one, of course, also often raised in all the debates about digital skills in STEM professions, is that we still have extremely low participation of women in these professions. So if we lose on half of our population, we can never reach the target. If we want to have 20 million and women do not participate in this, we will always have 10 million only. So this is definitely something that we fail to address still, despite of multiple very good projects and efforts we've been doing. And this brings us back to usual discussions of lack of role models, lack of seeing prospects of career. And what we saw in ICT sector actually is that even before COVID, that was the most flexible sector for women to work. So it's much better for those who want to strike some kind of balance with taking care of family or whatever needs women might have, because you can always work from home, you can always connect. It's usually ICT is a sector that is very easy to adapt with other potential issues that women might have and lifestyle we might want to have. But unfortunately, there is lack of understanding for that. And as much as we see a lot of this so-called bro culture in all these startups being run by men, in the ICT teams being driven by men, we will never attract women to do that. So it's definitely one part of the problem. And then perhaps the other part that brings us back a bit to discussion that we've been having before is that universities, they a little bit lag behind because we see the need of today when we need a couple of years to prepare the courses, to certify the courses, and then another 3 to 5 years to produce the workforce. And then these young people, they come to the market and we understand we have skills of 7 years ago, and it's not what is needed again. And once you make a choice of your profession, you are interested in all these metaverses, and maybe you want to create a company based on metaverse, but you look at the university offer and you are like, that's not exactly what is out there. I don't want to study just data analytics. So this is also a bit of lack of foresight and understanding what will be market needs of tomorrow. And that's difficult. University itself cannot do that, or company itself cannot do that. So this is also a matter that needs to be addressed.
Professor Martin, would you like to respond?
I feel that I must. Great points from everybody. First and foremost, I think, particularly in terms of the challenges that we have with SME and the SME sector, we make a concerted effort to include SMEs in our curriculum design and our co-design process, helped by the Union, the EU, particularly in terms of the funding calls. We put together what we feel are good one-year programs for people to be able to kind of upskill at a master's level. And I thought I had pressed, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Jack. And then the uptake is very low because people are citing time poverty, that they're being asked, particularly in the SME sector, to do the work of more than one person because of the recruitment crisis. And they just haven't got the time and space in order to be able to commit to the upskilling that we require. What I would say, particularly in terms of putting universities on a kind of a future-focused footing, the idea of empowering students, particularly at master's level, to be able to, in a very Netflix type fashion, be able to select their own degree pathway and their own upskilling pathway, is something that we recognise and is something that we are responding to. So specifically in an Irish context, the idea of 3 one-year professional diplomas taken over a 5-year period as contributing towards a master's degree, and that the idea of the second professional diploma might be different than what you'd initially intended it to be, depending upon the learning that you've undertaken in that first year and the reflective practice that is important. And I think just in defence of the university sector as well, I mean, the idea of that commitment to a one-year program of learning has a couple of things. First of all, university bursars like the idea of students in for a year, not in for a micro-credential of 6 weeks. That's what our funding models are based upon. But the idea of cybersecurity being finished after 4 weeks, a 4-week course or a short course, No, I mean, the idea of a 1 year reflective practice where people are engaging in what if thinking, engaging with their peers. Well, how did you handle that threat? How did we respond to this over a 1 year period? Is the kind of thing where universities can help, and that kind of reflective practice training is something that I think universities are uniquely placed to provide. That's what we're trying to do anyway.
I'll hand to Jack in a second, but just to bring in what everyone's saying online, actually, because we asked them a similar question. Of course, we gave them a closed answer set, and really the top result is really the lacking in the diversity of candidates to become specialists through training, upskilling, and reskilling. Then cultural mindset, which is touching on some of the points we heard today, but then followed by the fact that current pathways are not flexible enough. So really that last point that you put in, and maybe Jack, you wanted to add in something else there.
Yes, I think that my neighbors covered that, but let me point that point per point as we see it. One, indeed, from an education point of view, we need to reinvent a bit how we can produce those ICTs and not thinking, and with all the respect to all my colleagues from STEM, we need to rethink that to make sure that we can produce and attract much more. Two, from a skills development point of view, it's still too expensive to train ICT specialists. If you would like to train in very high-tech technologies, it will cost you as an employer unbelievable amount of money. We need to address that. Three, as you said, my neighbors said correctly, gender balance. We have an untapped or unaddressed potential of ICT specialists. And then I'm connecting again to what I said, connecting the value and getting attractive. We need, obviously, to have the right economic environment by showing the added value for ICT specialists to work in the ICT, not like the others. Oh, if you want to be famous, recognized socially and so on, you need to do this, or you create value for the society if you work like that. No, ICT specialists, we have the same. We need to provide a better view on the economic, then good jobs, advertise that they can, make careers. And last but not least, and I want to connect to the introduction of this session today, to the digital decade. We need to have, and that's why we have to recall what Eric said this morning. On the digital decade, we are connecting to public services more digital. We are SMEs adopting technologies, and we have infrastructure environments. We have to show the ICT talents, brains, that we have the right environment to develop here in Europe. Because we have AI capabilities, we are focusing on quantum, we are focusing on high-tech technologies, and they don't need to leave EU, and we need to make sure that we stay attractive to those talents. That's about what we have to work on, and sorry.
Thank you. I think for reinforcing Justina's point that we're essentially going into this fight with one hand behind our back currently, but also picking up on some of the areas that this return on investment. It needs to be clear for companies. That is a huge barrier, is that lack of visibility in the area. Maybe, Madhuvanti, just to bring you in to the conversation, do you want to comment on more of that, the return on investment and companies making that investment in their own people and bringing forward that new skilled generation within their existing workforce?
Yes, absolutely. So I know a lot of tech companies are already doing it in some form or the other, where they give their employees time to actually go and volunteer in schools or get the younger people interested in tech careers. And I think earlier in the panel, it was discussed that, it is difficult to retain them in government jobs because the private sector people are actually luring them. They are also existent in Europe. So I think it will still help, even if they are in the private sector, but are being able to motivate the young people to pick up tech careers. So it is actually going to be interesting to do. Other programs which they do, we've spoken a lot about trying to get the 50% of the workforce or more women and girls interested into STEM. There are programs that organizations do, the big tech companies, where they try to get women who have been out of a job for some time because they had to care for an elderly person of their family, or they had to take an extended maternity break or get their children to grow up, to come back into the workforce, reskill them and get them to restart their careers. So I think there are these two different segments. One is people who have to choose the career, where we have a lot of university experts sitting here and saying how to bring them in. Second is the alternative professions, as to those who did not maybe choose STEM careers to start with, but they have a way of being able to get pulled in and contribute to the ICT specialists. And the third are those who were in that career track but have dropped out. So there are these three different streams that we can actually focus on and be able to bring this return on investment. But again, going back to the point that I think is really important, we have to start young. We have to start with people who are just about thinking of how to do it. And one of the ways of doing it is to transform classrooms and make them more like maker spaces where they're building and creating and actually solving a problem, which is how it is in the real world. So this whole shift of the way we should take up education is something that is needed. I know it is extremely drastic, extremely different from the way we are used to, where you have a teacher sitting in the front and all the students sitting and listening. We don't need that anymore, right? The education is available online. People can learn concepts. What they need in a classroom is someone who can actually guide them to apply what they have learned and build and make things using that knowledge. So that kind of thinking is necessary to make it happen.
Thank you. I see a nice alignment there with what Jack was saying, that we need, we need to break our thinking slightly. That the pathways need to be completely rethought, and how we're approaching this also needs to be more experimented with and look forward. Hopefully, that was your point there. I'm going to just very quickly discuss, because I think, Jack, you mentioned the digital decade, and as we know, the colleagues here from the Commission are working hard each year now in developing, an annual report, looking at, what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. So, and particularly within that is various set of recommendations. Maybe, Jack, have you had a chance to kind of look at the specific recommendations, and would you have any ideas on how we can make that, more directed and more actionable for the member states and for the key stakeholders that are part of this digital decade environment?
I hope I will not reveal secrets from the Digital Decade Board now, and I hope that people from the Commission say, "No, Jack, please don't say that." We did.
Jack's mic has just been turned off.
Oh. We did a roundtable at the Digital Decade Board, and of course we were very happy to have the first report. And what was quite quickly a common position about the different member states was skills. Definitely. We were having a discussion, of course, about a number of other goals and KPIs and so on. Let's be clear with that. But skills was obviously without any discussion. Then what are the key findings? I will say they are soft and harder one. The soft is that we are all thinking about the same. We are all thinking how to bridge the gap on ICT skills. We're all thinking on that. If we go a bit higher on the ladder, is that we are developing in every of the countries multiple approach, and then we can learn from each other. Eric was mentioning in his slides an example from Austria. We like, of course, to have Belgian ones on the slides, but anyway, we have obviously a number of best practices. And one of the key demand we did now, together with the Commission and the members of the Digital Decade Board, is that how do we make sure that we can identify, understand, and potentially transfer the best practice to each other. And the third one are let's say, how we move in the spirit, and Eric was mentioning one of them, in terms of what we call the EDICS or MCP, multiple country programs. If we would like to address the skills, like other KPI of the Digital Decade Board, we cannot do it alone. It's not one single country issue. And then how we approach, and the cybersecurity EDIC is one good example, because one of the key ICT, let's say, competencies we need to develop is, for example, cybersecurity. That's already one. How we work more together to structure with all our stakeholders the program to ensure that the outcome of those programs will be higher. And again, we were mentioning this morning that it's much more things to do. And maybe allow me to make one last comment. We are making an evolution. I will call it revolution for today. In terms of public administration, we are changing our competence model. What does it mean? That we had a number of skills that every civil servant should have. And we had on the side what we call is an advantage. An advantage might be you work in international institutions, or you can talk languages, or you know ICT. We are moving now that ICT skills are part of what you need as a minimum. And that will be the way we will send a message to the market and everybody that today and tomorrow, the digital skills will be something you need to have. And I hope that all the stakeholders will understand that.
Thank you very much, Jack, for finishing on that point. I suppose maybe moving on to now the solutions, the ideas. So I would like to maybe invite the panelists to kind of give me their ideas. So right now, I'm going to give you 100 million euro in the hand, right? Again on really, if we were to hand them tomorrow, as in I hand you 100 million euro tomorrow, what would you spend it on, Martin, to solve this challenge?
So specifically a grand challenge designed from the ground up so that it is inclusive of gender, inclusive of industry in particular, inclusive of the types of multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary students that are needed to solve wicked problems, as we call them. Design it from the back. And I think particularly in relation to the digital decade, that this notion of starting there at this data space for skills, the idea of being able to look at things like, bias, being able to look at things like, well, okay, the AI gave you the wrong answer there. Why did it give you the wrong answer? And how can we correct it for the next time? And the idea of those kind of grand digital twin type challenges where we can engage a greater selection of society. I mean, I just look at, for example, things like computational linguistics conferences, natural language processing, where gender balance is much better. So that if the problem is interesting and sufficiently worthy, you will overcome these gender challenges and these kind of the talent challenges that we have in terms of engaging. So I think that's the challenge, is create these grand challenges.
So just to summarize, you're saying that we create this grand challenge that sets for the whole of Europe. We want to achieve this. Everyone needs to upskill to work towards it, working in teams, working for prizes. Is that it?
Absolutely. And crucially, make it easier for industry to get involved. Make it easier for industry professionals to get involved in terms of helping, because we find it that's what students warm to. The idea of problems and problem solving and skills for work. The idea that that's the one thing that, for example, they always said that universities are, well, yeah, okay, we got through your exams, but did it set us up for work? Did it set us up for our career? So the idea of industry involvement and making it easier for industry to get involved is, I think, a critical component.
Maybe Justina, from your point of view, what would you spend it on? Come on, 100 million in the hand.
I will come from completely different perspective, perhaps. It's clearly not one answer to everything, but I think that could be the basis. And I would like to have a kind of multidisciplinary platform that would
built on all the available innovative methods and technologies that we have to deliver evidence-based foresight for the skills that we will need tomorrow. I think that could help young people who look for career guidance to understand what will be the jobs of tomorrow. That would help education providers, both higher education, but we also speak of VT, of non-formal education providers, and would also help companies to understand what profiles we need to start looking for, where we need to invest, what kind of upskilling pathways we could be choosing for the employees we have now and who is the most fit for that. So that could be a good answer to many things that we don't know where to start with. And I know you have leads, right? With the dashboard, we have Erasmus Plus blueprints for the sector-specific foresight and skills, but we need to bring somehow all of that together, also build on digital skills data space that we will have. So all of that building together in one technological solution.
Thank you. Maybe Milan, what are you going to spend it on? You don't have to justify it. There's no receipts required.
Maybe in the same idea, I will create cooperative shared resources centers in order to help the smallest companies to benefit from those digital skills, but also to encourage the learning by doing, and so that those experts can learn from each other. So I think I will put all these centers everywhere in the cities, in the European cities.
Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, just before presenting the idea, only saying that we don't have to look like big pessimistic with a target of 20 million highly IT skilled specialists. What is important is to get the inflection point before 2030. It doesn't matter whether we will arrive to 20 million or to 15 million. What matters is in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll reach this inflection point where the exponential growth will start and where we'll have changed the mindset, the mentality, and so on. So that's quite important, not to focus on, okay, we'll not achieve 20 million. Okay, and so what? What is important is that we have the process being engaged. And that's quite an important message we should deliver to the audience. Personally, when you raise a question, if you had 100 million euro, I would reverse the question first to say, what should be the funding to be stopped, rather than what type of funding could we add? There are plenty of funding currently which are spread over to tiny initiatives which do not impact. It doesn't mean that these projects are bad, not at all, but their capacity to scale up is maybe problematic. And then we have to question really the model of supporting a lot of initiative. And of course, it doesn't mean stopping this, but from time to time, that's always the issue of thin spreading funds with a large concentration of funding. And from time to time, we may give less money to these small projects and more money for having more impactful initiative. And now regarding what we could do, so I'm representing more the secondary or the K-12 sector in education. For me, if there would be something to be done, that's something around teachers. And for the main reasons. One, we have a shortage of teachers in all disciplines. We have an age problem of teachers. We have, in Europe, I guess, I can't remember the exact figures, we have more than 1/3 of teachers which are more than 50 years old. In some countries, that's more than 50 teachers. I guess 50%. I guess in Germany or in Italy, there are more than 50% of teachers which are more than 50 years old, which means that in 10 years' time, we'll have to renew a very huge proportion of the teacher population. And there is a shortage of attractiveness of the teacher profession all over Europe. So that, for me, a major program for making the teacher profession more attractive is certainly something to be done. And within such a program, I really plead, and that's linked to our online speaker from Madrid, I only plead to start at the youngest age. Why do we have problem of stereotype? Why do we have issues with girls in science where parents say that's not for you, that's not a job for you, etc.? But the most majority of primary school teachers are not so keen on IT and STEM. That's the type of discipline they never were comfortable with when they made their studies. And they are asked to teach STEM, to teach IT to young students, to engage with new motivation, to make attractiveness. That's not possible. So what we are currently doing, we are patching. For the time being, we are patching. We are trying to make partnership. We ask engineering schools to come to support a primary school teacher in a region. There are particular open days organized, etc. But we're only patching. We need to empower more the primary school teacher. We need to help them for making the STEM, the IT, the jobs of tomorrow, to make them changing in the mindset. So that's part of the major program.
Thank you very much, Mark, and for reinforcing that point that really this is what we're looking for, is that inflection point here. How can we change our direction? That's what we want here. Exactly. Jack, 100 million. Come on. What do you got?
Then I was listening to my neighbors, and they were using about the amount. Mark, my impression is that you didn't use the full 100 million. Then I take the 100 million. I take the 100 million as you proposed, and a part of the Mark's 100 millions. Then it means that I have a bit more. More seriously, I like Mark's intervention, because this is something very important for us, and we need to dare that. And we were listening this morning about all the initiatives taken by DG Connect, is that we do a lot of things, and we need to measure, and not the KPI in output, but the KPI in outcome. And we have about the measure about what to do. Two, and you will say, oh, he's talking a lot now, but before I spend my money, I want to be, really cautious, as public administration, obviously. Then secondly, we need to just question also the ecosystem. If big companies like governments, we are training ourselves, the people. We have program to hire young people, and we train them in ICT schools ourselves. Also, large companies, and everyone is doing that. It should raise questions. All those efforts to produce ICT, mainly used for internal needs, then we need to address that. Then I don't know if it's the best idea. I will be happy that the audience today online will be challenging that, and I would like to listen their ideas. And we have quite a lot of people today online. I will be happy to use at least part of the money to reduce the financial burden to upscale, rescale the people. Because if it's costing just by individual thousands of euros just to move a bit the line, it's not okay. Then maybe having a sort of badging system, which is not a new idea, let's be very honest with that, but working very well, that people not necessarily having the right bachelor or things, together with academics, to just make sure that we are having the right competencies, we can get them, the people trained on large scale online and getting the badge we can trust. If, for example, the European platform is providing those badges, then we know that we can trust that the competence are valid. We don't have, for example, to check it again. We are trying this in Belgium together with the private sector, and it's promising. But of course, we're talking here about the ambition of AU. Thank you.
Thank you. And I already know what everyone's saying online, and you'll be pleasantly surprised, or aligned very well. Maramalti, are you still online?
Yes, I'm still online, and I'm very happy. I'm very happy on how everyone has decided to use their 100 million. So I'm going to be able to use my 100 million in the area where I would like to, because the other areas are already covered and taken care of by the rest of the money. So I would like to use my 100 million to spend it for the 10 to 18-year-old age group. Mark talked about K-12. I will become a little bit more specific. I want to focus on 10 to 18-year-old age group. I want to use the funding to work on changing the mindset of the students and everyone around them, to start thinking of STEM careers as a way of the future, giving benefits both to themselves in terms of prospects, money, better life, and the value and contribution it will bring to society. That's one. Second is, I would like to transform the classrooms into maker spaces where the students are going to come in and actually build stuff, make stuff, and solve problems using all the knowledge that they have been able to learn, whether it is online or through other classrooms. And there, the role of the teacher will be more like someone who is coaching and guiding and helping in being able to solve the problem. And everyone is going to be working in the form of teams, so that they know that in the real world scenario, nobody is solving a problem themselves. Even when if there is an ICT specialist, they're always working in teams of different skills to solve a particular problem. So this is where I will put my 100 million. I mean, it might not be the answer you are looking for. Bunny is not able to solve everything, but I think this would be a great start. Even if we don't miss the 20, even if we miss the 2030, I'm sure we are set in the right direction to exponentially move and bring Europe up there where it is expected to be in the tech domain.
Thank you very much, and thank you for closing on that. And I think we'll obviously look at this because, of course, DG Connect, DG ACK, there's different, and this is the problem with advanced digital skills. It touches on so many different policy portfolios and areas, and I think some of these need to probably come together in this. And as you say, Mark, weave together to drive that impact further in certain ways. But I think there's lots of food for thought that I think Rahana will go over in a second. But before I do that, maybe some of the answers that we have from the people in the audience. They want micro-credentials. So looking at flexibility, that certification element there, lifelong learning, and then primary education, the top three coming across when we asked them, what would you spend it on? And that's what they've given us there. And just moving on to some of the questions. So we've got some questions here that perhaps maybe the colleagues from the Commission will be able to answer in the chat. One specifically about why we talk about 20 million. I believe, and I can be corrected, it's to do with a certain percentage of the labour force. So that can be confirmed later on and available in the chat. There was also a question more about the existing finance initiatives under the digital programme, under the ADS cluster. So if you are interested in exploring what are those programmes that are being launched, most of them are online on the Digital Skills and Jobs platform, also on the advancedskills.eu website where you can find more information, but also they'll be coming more online as we get on through the next few months, as a lot of them have just started last month. So we'll give them a little bit of break to be able to get them together. And then I want to pick up on two questions. I'm going to steal a little bit of time from Rahana, if she allows me. Is one thing is very much actually du jour in terms of topic, and particularly over the weekend. I'm sure some of you have seen that the CEO of NVIDIA has come out and said that we don't need to teach coding as much anymore because of the evolution of AI means that we will actually become more users of more advanced platforms because the tools are coming down the skills level. I have said this in a software engineering conference and it didn't go very well, that we expected that to be a depressor of demand, but maybe would anyone like to comment on that, this particular discussion? Jack?
I think that we saw that on the slides. It's something we knew already for 30 years, that the skills required at one moment, especially in digital and ICT world, is moving. For example, at the first beginning, we needed people knowing a few languages. And then when we knew those languages, for the people who still knows that, we still have those language used in some of industries, which is COBOL and BASIC. And we need to have those skills. From time to time, when we introduce new languages like C++ and others with libraries, it required other type of knowledge. And in other words, we could reuse part of code quite quickly to program differently. And what we see today with emergence of low-code platforms and so on is changing too. Then I think the message is that we need to learn otherwise and we need to learn differently and we need to adapt with the evolution of the technology which is available. Then telling we don't need let's say traditional programmers, I think that probably, with all the respect I need to say to the CEO of NVIDIA, probably was mistaking things by saying we will need other ones than what we have today. Then this is definitely true. We see, for example, a decrease in networks people with NFV, and I don't know if it's for everybody very clear. NFV are all virtual functions, all automated in networks. Then we need less people like that. And we need, of course, much more specialists in terms of AI, cybersecurity, data sciences. And it will be moving from time to time, all the time. Then, yes, there are still jobs. come to ICT. We have a lack of ICT people, and we are hiring a lot of people.
I think you're pointing out that it is a shifting environment, and we actually do see this change. Even cybersecurity is becoming automated in terms of the application in this area. So it's not just coding in that environment, and it also marries very nicely with the analogy of the car. As in back in the day, 30 years ago, you had a manual in your car that you actually looked at. No one does that now, for example. So that's something to think about. Before I go to Martin, I'm going to go to Madumalti on this question. You had something to add there.
Yes, I actually wanted to add that I think the intent, being a coder myself, I think the intent of the NVIDIA CEO must have been, just like we know and we take it for granted that everybody knows reading and writing and mathematics, everybody will know reading, writing, mathematics, coding. So we don't need to necessarily focus an effort to be able to do it because it is going to be the standard. And it goes back to the first question you asked, Brendan, about what is the definition of basic and advanced digital skills. Like it was very well pointed out, the definition keeps changing. So therefore, coding is no longer what is needed. You need a little bit more than that. So I think that is how we should actually take it and focus on the additional piece that we need, or the more focused thing that we really need to know. So coding will be so normal and known by people that it is not necessarily a skill to go for. I think that's the intent with which
Nearly there. It's her. I think. Unfortunately, we've just lost you there, but we'll continue on. And just to say, to maybe defend the CEO, this has been a conversation that's been ongoing for the last couple of years. This isn't a sudden announcement, but it has been very much around this discussion of the influence that we will have from this rapidly evolving environment that keeps on changing. Martin, and then Mark, and then we'll close off.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose as in defense of my peers, just to note, and far be it for me to suggest this in any way that the CEO of NVIDIA doesn't know what's going on in the university sector. There is a thriving no-code and low-code movement within most computer science departments that I know across the EU. And the one thing to remember about abstraction is that it is a useful tool, but you still need to be able to explain what's going on under the hood. Otherwise, you will get unexplained results and you won't be able to explain them. And that is not good for the ethical deployment of AI across the EU. If we can't explain to our citizenry what's going on, we've got a really big problem, because we have a lot of disinformation out there as to what's going to happen with this big black AI cloud that's descending upon us. So at the end of the day, education, abstraction, all of the above, explainability, that's what we've got to do. And I think we're trying. Right? Not to say that we're perfect, but we're trying.
Mark, final word to you, Mark.
Yeah, that's really the issue of computational thinking rather than coding. And that's certainly one of the major elements. And our education systems are currently investigating. I guess there are more than 20 or 25 countries which have introduced computational thinking in the curriculum. But some countries take it as a separate discipline. Other countries consider that as part of an existing discipline. And so, which means it's really complicated, but there is no one fits all size measure on this. I only would like to make a small comment on not putting the car before the horses. And because if you look at the current situation regarding the basic competence of students leaving the primary school, all in Europe, there is 1/3 of students which are at risk for more than 15 or 20 years. Mastering the reading, writing, counting, basic skills. So we really have to keep that in mind, that we will not solve the appetite for IT, appetite for coding, if we do not secure the basic skills needed for all our young students. And that's something which should not be overlooked.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone online for your active contributions and participation. we'll get round to the questions that are there as well in the chat as best we can. And thank you to the panelists for dedicating their time to this interesting discussion. You will see it's multi-layer, and I think we probably could have taken this for another 3 hours, which is often the case. But just to say thank you very much to Milen, to Mark, to Justina, to Jack, Martin, and Madhumalti online. And maybe I'll hand over to Rihanna now to give us a summary, saving me a job, actually. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and thanks to you, Brandon, for such a lively, moderation, like you always do. I'll, my takeaways, because it's such a lively and rich conversation that I don't think I will do justice to summarize. But my takeaways, like 4 of them. So the first one is we started, by saying that the digital decade were they reasonable targets for you, ambitious target. And I really like what we said about, how do we actually get to the inflection point where we will be able, to really speed up and get to the target. So that is an important, mindset that we need to bring in this general discussion. My second takeaway is the metaphor, the car engine. Martin, I have to say that I can lift the hood, but I can't make sense of it. What does it say about my digital skills?
You're curious, which is a start.
But I do know that, we get more and more virtualized, engines. So that is a way for me also to understand how my car, could work. However, in terms of, we discussed a lot about definitions. What I just want to remind is that Eurostat has provided a definition that is broad enough, for all of us to be part of that. I would just want to read that so that we all align. So the Eurostat defines it as workers who have the ability to develop, operate and maintain ICT systems, and for whom ICT constitutes the main part of their job. So I think it's broad enough, to really to have all the different dimensions that we mentioned. Third takeaway in terms of challenges. So I think all of you coming from your, backgrounds, I think you really, you said very well the vast, scope of challenges that we have, that they are very different for formal education being in terms of, the shortage of teachers, the mindset of teachers, the moving up, the lack of STEM graduates, the lack of girls, in ICT education, everything that goes around it, including stereotypes and the lack of role models. We also spoke a lot about costs, the cost of training graduates, the cost of training, reskilling, upskilling workers, what it means for companies, when it comes to that, and the impact on salaries and down the chain in terms of productivity. We spoke about mindset. So a lot of multi-faceted challenges for all of us, which means my 4th takeaway, which is that there is no silver bullet. There is no one size fits all for any of us. However, we have a variety, we have a diversity of solutions, and that came across very well also in Slido, which is about flexible pathways that would correspond to the different careers that we all have, also for those who are not in careers. It's also about making it easier for industry to get involved upstream. That's what we've been trying to do, and that's what we'll continue to do. It's about making it easier SMEs to come in and really find their ways. It's about going beyond patching schools, into more transforming schools. And really making them maker spaces. I liked in Slido, there's also a solution about helping animals, but that also includes digital tools. So it's really a variety of solutions out there and bringing them together so they do not remain isolated, so that one nourishes the other, and that, as Jack was saying, we can develop best practices and really learn from each other. So next steps. In terms of next steps, we are having this series of conversation like the one today, which was a great conversation. And thank you very much to all of you for making it really so rich. We're going to continue and have a series of workshops. Brandon, you mentioned one in Madrid. We will also have one again, I don't remember, it's in April, on the 17th of April in Brussels. So please disseminate the invitation. And all these different insights that we get, in addition to the analysis and the work that is done by leads and by all of you, this will allow, on the one hand, to feed into the second report on the digital decade, which will come out in June, which will be adopted, and the future priorities that we will be working on, from 25 onwards. So this is important. And really, it's really a call out there to all of you to keep on nourishing the Commission's thinking, because obviously, your feedback and your input will be important for our own reflection. So with this, let me thank you, all of you, online, the audience, all of you, the panelists, the moderator, and also the whole team that organized, because it takes as much people to organize as the ones that are on stage. Really a big thank you to all of you. That was really, really great. And thank you to all of you. And I really wish you a very good bon appétit. See you at the next Connect University session on 5G. Bye, everyone.